Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. The high-pitched whistle of a departing train echoed through Grand Central Station, but Ethan Turner hadn't yet reached the platform. His heart was pounding, his briefcase banging against his leg as he weaved through the milling crowd. Every second that passed brought him closer to what he dreaded, missing that train and, with it, a life-changing career opportunity. As he accelerated, absent-mindedly pushing past a few passers-by, a hand landed on his shoulder. He turned abruptly and met the gaze of a mysterious woman, wearing a dark purple coat and a slightly tilted hat. Her deep green eyes seemed to read beyond his anxiety, penetrating his most intimate thoughts. "You're late," she said in a soft but strangely authoritative voice. Ethan blinked in surprise. Yes, I have to take the train," he replied, stammering. The woman smiled slightly, almost as if she expected his answer. "Sometimes being late is a blessing in disguise," she murmured. "That I can show you something that will change your life." Ethan shrugged skeptically. Yet, he felt a chill run through him. He couldn't explain why, but a part of him wanted to follow her. Who are you?" he asked, his curiosity overcoming his haste. "They call me Madame Celeste," she replied. "That I see paths others don't. Today, your path can change, if you're willing to listen." Before he could protest, she slipped into his hand a small, worn leather notebook, marked with a strange and fascinating symbol. "Keep it close, Ethan. Every page contains choices and warnings. Be careful what you decide. Your life will never be the same." The train finally arrived, puffing out a cloud of steam and hot iron. Ethan hesitated, notebook clutched to his chest. Then, reluctantly, he followed an instinct he didn't yet understand. This delay, he thought, might be the beginning of something bigger than himself. And in the rushing crowd of the station, Madame Celeste disappeared like a breath of wind, leaving Ethan alone with a mysterious notebook and an unexpected fate. The next morning, Ethan Turner woke up with the notebook lying next to his alarm clock. The light filtering through the blinds drew stripes on his bedside table, and he felt a mixture of excitement and doubt run through him. He remembered Madame Celeste perfectly, her piercing eyes and her strange voice that seemed to echo in his head. "Your life is about to change." He hesitated for a second, then opened the notebook. The pages were filled with dense, almost microscopic writing, with symbols and notes he didn't immediately understand. Yet some sentences seemed strangely familiar, as if they described situations he had experienced the day before or even thoughts he had had but hadn't expressed. A note caught his attention. "Don't take the Fifth Avenue taxi this morning. You'll regret it." Ethan smiled in disbelief. "Of course, and why not?" he murmured, thinking it was a mere coincidence. Yet a feeling compelled him to listen. He decided to walk to the office that morning, braving the cold and the morning traffic. Along the way, he encountered hurried faces, honking taxis, and an eerie feeling that he was being watched, guided by some invisible force. Arriving at the office slightly late, Ethan learned that the taxi he would normally have taken had been involved in a spectacular accident. The driver was unharmed, but the vehicle was completely destroyed. He stood there, holding the notebook, realizing that what he had thought was a coincidence might have had a deeper meaning. As the day progressed, he noticed small details, a crucial email that could have been lost, an unexpected encounter with a colleague who gave him crucial advice, and even a missed appointment that, paradoxically, protected him from a major mistake. Everything seemed orchestrated by the notebook, and Ethan was beginning to understand that this encounter in the train station had not been a simple coincidence. That evening, he sat on the balcony of his apartment, watching the city light up under the streetlights. The notebook lay open on his lap. A thought came to him, both exciting and frightening. What if this notebook wasn't just a guide, but a way to change my life forever? Before falling asleep, he wrote in his journal, "Tomorrow I will follow the next instruction. Even if I don't yet understand why, I must trust what I cannot yet see." And so began Ethan Turner's journey, a journey where every choice would be crucial, every encounter significant, and where the delay of a single train would propel him into an adventure he could never have imagined. The next morning, Ethan Turner opened the notebook with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. Each page seemed alive, as if the words had been written just for him, in an almost coded language that he was beginning to decode instinctively. The first note he read that morning said, "Today you will meet someone who will shake up your routine. Don't run away, even if fear tempts you." Ethan smiled, thinking about his typical day at the office. He dressed quickly, slipping the notebook into his coat pocket, and stepped out into the bustling streets of New York. At every corner, he couldn't help but scan the passers-by, looking for the person he'd been waiting for. A few hours later, he entered a cafe he rarely frequented, drawn by a strange intuition. There, by the window, a man seemed to need help. His computer had crashed and his papers were scattered on the table. Ethan instinctively approached and offered his help. "Thank you. I'm Jordan," the man said, extending his hand. "I'm working on an important project and I'm completely stuck." Ethan, surprised by how easily he'd decided to intervene, helped him organize his documents and get his computer up and running again. Jordan, grateful, invited him to stay to discuss a collaboration opportunity. Ethan realized then that the notebook was right. This seemingly innocuous encounter could transform his day, and maybe more. Back home, he sat with the notebook on his lap, reflecting on what he had just experienced. The predictions were not mere coincidences. Every piece of advice, every warning, seemed like a precise guide, capable of changing the course of his life. The notebook also contained strange symbols and diagrams that Ethan didn't yet understand. He spent hours studying them, convinced they held a deeper key to understanding the true scope of these instructions. A persistent thought haunted him: what if this notebook could predict not only the events, but also the choices that would make me a completely different man? As night fell, Ethan felt a mixture of excitement and worry. The notebook was no longer a mysterious object, it had become his secret guide, his compass for navigating a world where every decision could have unforeseen consequences. And somewhere deep inside him, a little voice whispered, "This is just the beginning." The next morning, Ethan Turner woke with a strange tension in his chest. The notebook on his bedside table seemed almost to glow in the light of the rising sun. He opened it and read the note waiting for him. "Don't take the Fifth Avenue cab this morning. A seemingly insignificant decision could save your day, or worse." Ethan frowned. Once again, he doubted. But something in the notebook urged him to listen. After a moment's hesitation, he decided to walk to the office, despite the biting New York cold. Each step seemed calculated, guided by an invisible force. Along the way, he watched the taxis passing by, each one red or yellow, honking and zigzagging through the traffic. His mind kept returning to the sentence in the notebook. Then, as he rounded an intersection, there was a tremendous crash. A taxi had just crashed into a lamppost, its windows shattered and its body twisted. Ethan felt a cold shiver run down his spine. If only he had taken that vehicle, he would have been at the center of the accident. He then realized that this notebook was not a simple guide, it seemed capable of protecting his life. Arriving at the office, Ethan was greeted with a mixture of relief and surprise. What could have been an ordinary day took an unexpected turn. His boss, Mr. Harrison, assigned him an urgent and prestigious project, an assignment that could boost his career if he succeeded. Ethan felt the weight of responsibility, but also the opportunity the notebook had offered him by keeping him away from the accident. Yet a feeling of unease persisted. The notebook dictated his movements, his choices. Was he truly free? Or was he just a pawn in a game whose rules he didn't understand? At noon, he took a break in a nearby cafe, reflecting on the morning's events. He opened the notebook and read a new sentence. "Small decisions shape big lives. Be mindful of every moment." Ethan smiled, a glimmer of understanding in his eyes. That first decision had been simple, almost trivial, but it had saved his life and opened the door to new opportunities. He understood that the notebook wasn't just predicting the future, it was testing his ability to listen, to think, and to act. As he returned to his office, he felt his life begin to change, not just because of the notebook, but because of himself. Every step, every choice, every action took on a significance he had never imagined. And somewhere, he knew that this was only the beginning of a journey where every decision, small or big, would be decisive. In the following weeks, Ethan Turner's life took a turn he never imagined. Every morning, he opened the notebook before he even got out of bed, like a secret ritual. The instructions were specific, but never oppressive. They seemed to encourage him to act with discernment, to notice details most people overlooked. One Tuesday, the notebook told him, "Today someone will offer you advice that will change your outlook. Listen carefully, even if you don't understand right away." On the crowded subway, a stranger touched his shoulder and handed him a small piece of paper. Ethan, surprised, read the message. "Don't just look for success, look for meaning. The rest will follow." Strangely, he instantly understood that this advice corresponded exactly to what the notebook was trying to teach him. This unexpected encounter, simple and innocuous, made him reflect deeply on his priorities. The notebook continued to guide his days. It prompted him to meet Jordan, the colleague he had helped at the cafe. Together, they worked on an ambitious professional project, and Ethan saw his skills recognized in a way he had never experienced. Then, the notebook prompted him to reconnect with an old friend, Clara, whom he hadn't seen for years. Their meeting was gentle and natural, and she became a valuable support, both friendly and emotional, strengthening his confidence. Even in his love life, the notebook's advice proved subtle but effective. One evening, in a small Brooklyn restaurant, he met Sophie, a passionate graphic designer. The notebook had guided him to that exact place, at that exact moment, and their conversation, light-hearted but sincere, left a lasting impression on his heart. For Ethan, every encounter, every action guided by the notebook, seemed to create an invisible web of possibilities. He began to understand that the notebook was not just a tool for avoiding danger, but a catalyst for building a life rich in meaning and opportunity. Yet one question still haunted him: how far can I go? The predictions were powerful, but what if one day he decided not to follow the instructions? Was this really his life, or the one the notebook was drawing for him? As he walked home that evening, Ethan felt for the first time a strange certainty: he was no longer just the person he had been before meeting Madame Celeste. Every step, every decision guided by the notebook, brought him closer to the best version of himself. And he knew, deep down, that his journey was only just beginning. Despite all his recent successes, Ethan Turner began to feel a new tension. The notebook, until then a reliable guide, was beginning to awaken deeper questions in him. Was he truly in control of his life, or merely a tool in a game whose rules he didn't understand? One morning, when he opened the notebook, an unusual note awaited him. "Today you will be tempted to stray from the path. The temptation is natural, but think carefully before you act." Ethan frowned. The message didn't specify a specific course of action, but it did suggest he might choose not to follow the path set before him. For the first time, he felt the urge to make his own decisions, to prove he wasn't entirely guided by a mysterious object. At the office, he received an email about a major career opportunity, but an inner voice advised him not to follow the notebook's recommendation. Ethan hesitated. Should he listen to his instincts, or follow the guide who had protected him and made him successful so far? Later, during a crucial meeting, he chose to make a decision different from the one suggested in the notebook. Immediately, tension mounted. The results weren't catastrophic, but they were far from perfect. He saw the surprised looks on his colleagues' faces and felt a mixture of frustration and satisfaction. He had dared to decide for himself. This small act of rebellion awakened in Ethan a keener awareness of his freedom. He began to understand that the notebook was not a master, but a guide, a tool to help him, but not to control him. Each page offered valuable advice, but the final decision was always his. Yet doubt persisted. What would happen if he continued to ignore instructions? What if some decisions were beyond his understanding and had dire consequences? The notebook never revealed everything, only what he deemed necessary. This inner tension marked a turning point in his relationship with the notebook. It was no longer just a matter of blindly following. He had to learn to discern, to listen to his intuition, and to accept that sometimes, risk was part of the game. As he walked home that evening, Ethan felt the weight of responsibility weigh more heavily than ever. The notebook had opened doors, but now he had to choose, with courage and clarity, the path he truly wanted to take. And, for the first time, he understood that real transformation came not only from the advice in the notebook, but from his own ability to decide. The cold late afternoon wind whipped across Ethan Turner's face as he walked toward the address Madame Celeste had given him the first time they met. His hands trembled slightly, not from cold, but from apprehension. He had been following the notebook for several weeks, but doubts were growing. Was he truly free? Or was he merely a puppet being manipulated by invisible instructions? He knocked on the door of a small, eclectic apartment filled with antique books and scented candles. Madame Celeste was waiting for him, seated behind a table covered with crystals and mysterious cards. Her green eyes, always piercing, seemed to probe his soul as soon as he entered. "Ethan. I knew you'd come back," she said calmly. "You have begun to question your freedom. This is normal." Ethan sat down, notebook clutched to his chest. "I followed your instructions, every day. But I also doubted myself. What if all this wasn't really me? What if I was just a puppet of this notebook?" Madame Celeste smiled softly. "The notebook doesn't control you, Ethan. It reveals possible paths, shows you options you might otherwise miss. It doesn't decide for you. The real power is your ability to choose." She placed her hand on the notebook and opened it. "Do you see these symbols and notes? They don't predict your future in absolute terms. They highlight what your choices could bring about. Each page is a mirror of your potential. You must understand that danger or success only exists because you participate in it." Ethan listened intently, absorbing every word. "So, if I refuse certain instructions, if I deviate from the path, there will be no catastrophe?" "Not necessarily. But every deviation has its own consequences. The notebook never lies, but it can't control everything. You must learn to trust your judgment, not just its advice." A silence fell. Ethan felt a mixture of fear and liberation. He finally understood that the notebook was a tool, a powerful one indeed, but that the real power resided within him. "You see, Ethan," said Madame Celeste, standing up, "the biggest challenge isn't following the notebook, but knowing when to follow it and when to listen to your heart. That's how you take control of your life." Before leaving, she gave him one last piece of advice. "Use the notebook, but never be a slave to it. And remember, the greatest changes come from the choices you dare to make yourself." Ethan left the apartment with a sense of clarity and responsibility. He understood that his journey wasn't just a series of instructions to follow. It was a path toward mastery of his own life, a learning process where every decision counted and where courage and intuition became his most valuable allies. And, for the first time since he had met Madame Celeste, he felt that he was finally ready to choose his destiny. On Monday morning, Ethan Turner awoke with a sense of dread. The notebook on his bedside table seemed to be silently calling to him. A handwritten note awaited him. "Today you must choose between two paths. Neither is easy, but one will reveal your courage." Her heart was beating faster than usual. This time, the instructions weren't simple. They didn't suggest a trivial action to avoid an accident or mistake. They posed a real dilemma. At the office, he received two simultaneous offers. The first, professional, was a unique opportunity, a position of responsibility that could transform his career overnight. The second concerned a close friend, Clara, who was going through a family crisis. She needed his immediate help, and the notebook had predicted that his intervention could change everything for her. Ethan closed his eyes and took a deep breath. The notebook had shown him how to avoid danger, optimize his choices, but this time, he had to decide with his heart. Logic told him to seize the professional opportunity. But something inside him, a deep intuition, pushed him toward Clara. He remembered Madame Celeste's words, "The greatest change comes from the choices you dare to make for yourself." He picked up his phone and called Clara. His voice trembled slightly as he explained that he would arrive within the hour to help her. Then he turned to his computer and informed his boss that he had to postpone the decision regarding the position, explaining that an urgent personal matter required his attention. The day was trying. Helping Clara required all his energy and patience, but as the hours passed, he saw the relief and gratitude in her eyes. He understood that this choice, although difficult, had had a tangible and real impact on someone else's life. Later, when he got home, he opened the notebook and read a final note. Courage is not measured by the magnitude of your successes, but by the strength to follow what you feel is right. You have chosen wisely. Ethan smiled, a sense of peace filling him. He understood that the notebook wasn't just a guide to achieving material success. It was a tool for learning to listen to his heart, to weigh the true cost of each decision, and to discover the strength within himself. For the first time, he felt that he was no longer just a passenger in his life. He was its driver. And this choice, difficult but right, had marked a turning point. He was beginning to transform into the man he had always wanted to become. A few days later, Ethan Turner found himself facing an unexpected and stressful situation. At work, a jealous colleague named Brandon Whitman had discovered some of Ethan's recent successes and seemed determined to sabotage his reputation. Brandon, arrogant and manipulative, attempted to discredit him during a crucial meeting with management. Ethan felt a surge of adrenaline. His instincts, honed by weeks of following the notebook, told him to remain calm and thoughtful. The notebook had taught him to observe details, anticipate movements, and weigh his reactions. He quickly consulted a note he had written the day before. Remain polite, but be firm. The arrogance of others should not destabilize your balance. As Brandon launched his accusations, Ethan took a deep breath. He responded clearly and precisely, presenting evidence of his work, the results achieved, and the actions he had taken for the good of the team. Every word was measured, every gesture controlled. It was no longer simply a matter of defending his success, but of demonstrating his competence and dignity. The room fell silent. Even Brandon, who had expected him to lose his temper, seemed surprised. The leaders, impressed by Ethan's composure, took note of his rigor and lucidity. Brandon, furious but unable to respond, withdrew, knowing he had lost the confrontation. After the meeting, Ethan took a few moments to himself and consulted his notebook. One handwritten note from Madame Celeste stood out in particular. Trials are not there to crush you, but to reveal your inner strength. You have passed this test. Ethan smiled, a mixture of pride and relief. He realized that the weeks spent with the notebook hadn't just guided him to material success or important encounters. They had prepared him to face real conflicts, to demonstrate patience, strategy, and courage, even in the face of manipulation and arrogance. This confrontation was a turning point. He understood that the notebook not only offered him instructions for avoiding dangers or seizing opportunities, but also trained him to become a man capable of facing anything with dignity and confidence. Walking home that night, Ethan felt stronger, more confident, and more self-aware. He knew now that no challenge, no matter how unpredictable, could shake him as long as he listened to his instincts and stayed true to himself. And, in a corner of his mind, he knew that new, perhaps even greater, challenges awaited him. But for the first time, he wasn't afraid of them. He was ready. In the days that followed, Ethan Turner felt a new calm wash over him. After facing Brandon's jealousy and attempts at sabotage, he realized his relationship with the notebook had evolved. It was no longer a simple guide to follow blindly, but a silent companion that informed his choices while giving him the freedom to act. That morning, he opened the notebook and read a note that perfectly summed up his state of mind. Accept what is given to you, but never forget that the real power is within you. Every choice is yours, every consequence too. Ethan smiled. Since meeting Madame Celeste, he had learned to discern, to reflect, and to act with courage. Small decisions as well as big ones had shaped his life, but now he knew he could assert himself without feeling trapped in a notebook. At the office, he found his confidence and natural calm inspired others. Colleagues sought him out, not only for his expertise, but also for his ability to keep a cool head in difficult times. Even Clara and Jordan noticed his growth. They were impressed by the maturity and confidence he exuded. Ethan understood that acceptance wasn't submission. He accepted the notebook's help, Madame Celeste's advice, and even life's unexpected situations. But he no longer let anything decide for him. He was the master of his choices, capable of learning, adapting, and taking measured risks. That evening, he sat on the balcony, notebook on his knees, and watched the city sparkle under the streetlights. He thought about everything he had experienced since that fateful day he missed his train. A seemingly insignificant delay, an unlikely encounter with a clairvoyant, a mysterious notebook. Everything had contributed to transforming him. A sentence echoed in his mind, the one Madame Celeste had said to him during their last meeting. The greatest change comes from the choices you dare to make for yourself. Ethan smiled lightly. He knew he had taken an important step. He had learned to listen to his notebook, to anticipate, to seize opportunities, but above all, he had learned to listen to his own instincts and to trust himself. This acceptance finally freed him. His life was no longer dictated by an object or by circumstances. It was a reflection of his decisions, his courage, and his will. And this freedom, more precious than anything, filled him with new energy, ready to face the final chapters of his journey. A few months later, Ethan Turner had changed, but not just outwardly. His calm, confidence, and inner clarity were palpable. Every decision he made seemed to be shaped by a perfect balance of instinct, wisdom, and experience. The notebook, still present, was now only a secondary tool. It served as a guide, but the true authority now resided within him. That evening, he decided to visit Madame Celeste one last time. He needed to say goodbye and thank her. The psychic's apartment, always decorated with candles and crystals, exuded the mysterious aura that had fascinated him from the beginning. "Ethan," said Madame Celeste as she saw him enter. "You're ready." "Yes," he replied, smiling. "Thank you for everything. You guided me, but I know now that I am the one who chooses my life." Madame Celeste nodded, an approving smile on her lips. "You've got the gist of it. The notebook was just a tool. Real change comes from you. From your courage, your discernment, and your ability to act on your heart." Ethan stood up and walked out into the brightly lit streets of New York. He felt a freedom he'd never known before. Every corner, every light, every face in the crowd seemed to remind him that he could decide his path, without depending on signs or predictions. The notebook, which he kept in his pocket out of habit, became a discreet symbol of everything he had learned, the importance of choices, the value of courage and the power of intuition. Later, on his way home, he stood on the balcony and gazed at the city glittering under the streetlights. The train delay that had started it all now seemed almost surreal. That moment of panic had been the starting point of an extraordinary journey. Ethan knew he would continue to face challenges, difficult decisions, and moments of uncertainty. But this time, he was ready. His life was no longer a simple chain of unpredictable events. It was a conscious creation, shaped by his choices and determination. And as the night breeze caressed his face, he finally understood that true power came neither from the notebook, nor from the psychic, nor from circumstances. It came from himself, from his ability to decide, to act, and to transform his life. Ethan Turner smiles, a calm and confident smile, ready to write each new chapter of his life with courage, freedom, and confidence.